What's up guys, Kill 'em Softly here again with another tips and tricks video for Valheim. The last video has been doing so well and I appreciate y'all's support so much on it. But that led me to believe that y'all probably want some more tips and tricks on this game and some more hidden mechanics. So I've got 20 more hidden mechanics in the game that I'm going to share with you right now. And as with the last time, I'm not going to go in any particular order. These are all just kind of random and are all just little hidden mechanics that are within the game. So enjoy. So as you're playing Valheim, you're probably like, the camera angle is a little janky sometimes. Did you know that if you use the scroll wheel, you can actually zoom in and out for your third person perspective, which will help you get close and tight if you're in a tight confined space, or if you're out in the open, you can zoom out and get a wider perspective of the surroundings around you. So the hoe can be a little bit frustrating to use if you don't understand this mechanic, and that is the hoe will flatten the ground based off of the height where you're currently standing. So it will either raise or lower based off of where you're standing at. So if you stand a little bit higher than the ground around you, it's going to raise the ground up a little bit. Or if you're standing a little bit lower than the ground around you, then it will bring the ground down to your height. So one time-saving mechanic that I like to use is rest during nighttime when you're smelting things. That way it speeds up the smelting process, and then when your character wakes up, all of the stuff is all done for you, and then you can just keep going. If you attack or swing an axe or swing a pickaxe at anything, if you hit multiple objects or enemies, the damage of that axe or sword or whatever you're using is actually split across however many things that you hit. Normally you like hit one thing and it does a set amount of damage, and then if you actually clip into more than one thing, that damage is split by a percentage base onto those different objects or enemies. So I want to thank RLE for their comment on the last video about the smoke and fire placement. And I just want to clarify that so everybody can kind of understand it a little bit better. Like RLE said, you can't have your fire exposed. So if you've built you a nice little chimney in your house and you're thinking, oh man, this looks cool, it actually won't work correctly, because if it rains, the rain will actually get down in the chimney and put out your fire. You still need to have some kind of covering over it, some kind of roof covering over the chimney to prevent rain from putting out your fire. Also with the fire placement, any fire item, either torch, campfire, anything like that, if you put it too close to another object above it, it will not have enough room to breathe and it will go out. So you just unlocked the ability to build a raft, which is great, but did you know that the raft is the absolute slowest thing on water in the game? Even at full wind speed, you're still going slower than any of the other two boats at paddle speed. It is just god-awful slow. I only recommend using the raft if you are on a starter island that you don't have access to a black forest area. That's the only time I recommend using the raft, is to like get to another island where you have more resources to build up and to get an actual boat like the carve or the longboat. But yeah, the raft is trash. So this kind of goes along with what I was saying about the raft. If you aggro enemies too close to the shore, they can actually destroy your boat and leave you kind of stranded. And that can happen even worse with the raft, because again, it's so slow that you pretty much can't outrun anything with the raft. But even with a carve or longboat, you have to be careful about enemies attacking you, especially enemies that can fly or do long-ranged attacks. Two enemies that you need to be extremely careful of when using the boat is the wraith and the mosquito, deathsquito, whatever it is. Both of those will just ruin your day and can destroy a boat pretty fast. So be sure to have full sails to try to get away from both of those enemies if you aggro them. Yeah, because they will mess you up. The threat of having enemies damage your boat is another reason to always keep your ship fully repaired. So anytime that you come in to your base, be sure to repair your ship, and anytime you go to leave, always make sure your ship is fully repaired. It's always a good idea to keep at least 10 wood in your pocket. That way you can quickly build a workbench in a pinch. Just pull over to the shore, build a workbench real fast, and then you can repair your ship right there. You don't need a roof or anything on the workbench in order to do that. So you've probably heard that there's a trader NPC in the game that you can trade gold and other valuable items to. And if you're trying to find him, he's in no set location. He is going to be a little bit further out from the starter island, but essentially you'll just have to sail around, and his little emblem, it looks like a little sack, and you don't have to uncover the fog of war in order to see him either. It'll just appear on the map as you get close enough to it. Did you know that you can actually place campfires inside of dungeons to get the rested bonus? This is a pretty useful technique when you're in crypts because you'll be doing a lot of mining and fighting inside the crypt, so it's good to have a campfire in there to give you that rested bonus. So speaking of crypts, did you know that you can actually mine the muddy piles of scrap in the doorways to, one, get access to other parts of the dungeon, and you also get items out of the muddy piles of scrap. So you get iron scrap, ancient bones, and leather scrap, I think those are the three things that you'll get out of it. But be sure to mine every inch of the muddy scrap because you don't always get something when you mine a piece of it. So get every little piece of it off the walls, off the floor and everything, to try to mine as much iron scrap as you can. And because there can be so many muddy scrap piles in a crypt dungeon, be sure to bring at least one or two other pickaxes to save you trips from having to go back to your base and repair your items. Another thing that can help you out inside of dungeons as well as just at nighttime, when you find the trader, the very first thing that I would recommend buying is the headlantern. It's the little headgear that you can buy from him. It's essentially like a flashlight that you wear on your character. And it's actually pretty good for dungeons when you're trying to find little items on the floor or that last little piece of muddy scrap pile to mine. So before you make the trek into the swamp area or into a crypt, I would highly recommend creating a poison resistance potion. There's a lot of poisonous things in the swamp area, and poison will absolutely wreck you if you're not prepared for it. So this is another hidden mechanic that I found. When you're running uphill, you actually use more stamina than you normally would just running on flat ground. I don't know if this is an intended thing. It seems like it would be intended, but yeah, I found that and I thought it was a pretty interesting thing. So I know I talked about parrying in the last video, but did you know that you can also parry attacks while you're jumping in midair? Did you know that the wind lines actually show you how much wind is blowing and in what direction? So it's not just the direction the wind is blowing, but it's also how much wind is blowing. And you can tell based off of how many of those little squiggly lines you see in the air. If there's only a few of them, that means the wind's blowing in that direction, but you know, it's not really blowing that hard. But if you see a lot of them, that means the wind is blowing fairly hard. So another little hidden mechanic that they've added onto that is that if you're in the big map, you can actually see the direction and speed of the clouds on the map, and that's also an indication of wind direction and wind speed. Speaking of strong winds, you may or may not have noticed this before, but if you go full sails when there's really strong wind, it will actually push your boat in whatever direction that the wind is blowing, much like in real life. So you understand wind speed and direction and all that jazz now, but did you know that individual biomes actually have different amounts of wind depending on what biome it is? And the swamp biome actually has the least amount of wind of any biome. So if you transition into the swamp biome, you'll kind of notice that the wind will die down. Even if you have, you know, full wind behind your sails, the wind will die down and your boat will slow down a little bit. So for the last hidden mechanic that I found, this one's actually pretty funny. You could actually run over enemies and animals and stuff in the boat and kill them. I don't know if that's a viable tactic or not, but hey, if you get the opportunity and your last ditch effort, you can just run over something if you need to kill it. All right, that's it for this video, guys. I just want to thank y'all all so much for the support lately on the YouTube. And if you're not already subbed, make sure you're clicking that sub button and give the video a like if you enjoyed this content. And I wish you all positive vibes until next time, guys. See ya.